This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rapin. Joining me this week, the two sexiest, angriest boys in the Star Wars universe, Kylo Ren and Anakin Skywalker. Tia Vasilio.
Hello.
And Kara Shimborski.
I find your lack of preparation disturbing.
Yeah, we've really fucked this up a few times, haven't we?
Yeah, you know, we're just going to run with this one because this is the I Read Comic Books podcast. This is episode 343 for those of you at home keeping score. I'm here with Kara and Tia to talk about comic books, and we're clearly very prepared for today's episode, which is going to be absolutely absurd. So I guess we should just dive right into things and say hello to everybody out there who hung out with us at the Patreon, or excuse me, at the Discord hangout that we had last night, which was awesome. We're here to talk about comics, and I have two questions that I need to ask, which is how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Tia.
Hi, I've been mad because all the concerts that I want to go to are happening and I can't go to them because pandemic reasons, but terrible people keep texting me about it. So stop doing that. And also bands, stop having concerts without me. Please.
The whole world should just kind of stop until you say so, I think.
I mean, can they at least stop until it's not going to kill people to like be out doing stuff with them? Thanks. That would be cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess Gerard Way in various outfits is something that we can all agree is beautiful and wonderful and wholesome. So
I mean, the TikTok content alone from that is very entertaining, I will say, despite people going out and being in large groups, despite it not being very safe. I am glad that we're at least getting footage and proof that he's living his best life.
Oh my God, the crop top outfit. Like, I swear, I just am like, you look like a 1940s, like, film star pinup girl. I'm here for it. Like, live your best life.
I just want to inform you all that my entire frame of reference for Gerard Way is that music guy who became a comic guy. I know nothing else.
Right.
I think he was always both.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was always like a writer, and then he did music, and then because of his music, he met folks like Grant Morrison, and they helped, you know, basically find his way into comics, I think. They end up being like mutual fans of each other, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, Grant Morrison plays the villain in Killjoys.
Oh, so so the answer to the question of how do I break into comics is you're already famous and you meet famous comic people who connect you.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're really going to go back in the timeline, I think the answer is 9/11. But Mike, that's a whole other difference. Well, hold on. This is not just a senseless joke. I mean, Gerard Way started his band because of 9/11.
No, that's true. That's true.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
the saddest sad boy origin.
Also,
I'm gonna
sad,
send you
fun
some videos.
Fact about Gerard Way is Joe Rogan is his brother, which it's giving very good and evil. Like there must be balance in the force.
You made that up.
Yeah,
I refuse to believe this fact.
I'm sorry that you have to know this now.
Hold on.
Are they brothers or is it like an alternate dimension variant?
No, they're cousins. They're cousins. They're cousins.
I said that, right? I didn't say brother.
But
you said brothers.
You said you said brother.
No, I'm sorry. Look, I just woke up like an hour ago.
No, that's okay. I was like, I knew they were related, but I didn't realize that they were brothers.
I was thinking cousins. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, Tia, it's honestly better that way. Panic.
I was like panic typing over here. I was like, no, it can't be true.
I'm picturing that Simpsons episode where like there's Hugo in the basement and they feed him fish heads. Only it's Joe Rogan.
Oh, God. I've never seen
Tia.
that, but what a visual.
Tia, what comics have you been reading? We've got to get into this. That's okay.
It's spooky season. Yay. So I read Chilling Adventures Presents Weirder Mysteries, which like my attention span has been like in and out the past couple of years. And so I love when there's these like cool little one-shot anthologies of short stories. There's just enough to be kind of like fun and digestible, but not, you know, so much that you have to like pay attention to a lot. It's just it's like TikTok, but a comic. So this one has work by Frank Thierry, Joanne Starr, Ron Robbins. I'm just like reading the list because there's always a lot of people on these. The art is Juan Bobbio and Ryan Jampol and Federico Sabatini. I don't watch Riverdale regularly as some of us do, but I feel like this has big Riverdale vibes in the sense that like a bunch of weird shit happens. Nothing phases anybody. Betty's just like, what up? Are you a werewolf? Are you an alien? Are you a vampire? Probably one or all three. And everyone's just like, Betty, please, we're trying to eat. Right? Like no one cares.
It's very Riverdale is, if anything, marked by its pronounced lack of stakes. Like crazy shit happens and they're just like, anyways.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly. But also, like, I don't blame Betty for being paranoid because you can't trust anyone anymore. You can't trust anyone. Like, for real, you're all off my zombie apocalypse team. I see you all out there at the MCR show not wearing a mask and claiming that you just have allergies 5 days later. Like, no, you're all the weaklings. I don't trust any of you. You would all get bitten and lie about it. So you're all probably also shape-shifting werewolf aliens. And so me and Betty, like, we get it, okay? We get it.
This is, I think, the only time that you will ever identify with Betty Cooper as a character,
right?
Tia, so enjoy this moment.
I know. So then there's another story where they travel back in time to the ancient past of 1995.
Oh, so many years ago, way back in those days, they didn't have the internet.
No, she said ancient past, and I was like, oh, fuck, did they bring back Archie BC? Because that was a thing.
No way.
Wait, you've never seen the Caveman Archie comics?
No. Oh my. All right, hold on. Let's see you get through this ancient times of 1995 before we talk that far into Archie lore.
They encounter their friends' decrepit old parents. Look, as much as I'm totally fine with aging, I do forget that for kids now, the 90s are as long ago as the 70s seemed to me when I was a kid. And that's just wild to think about. Like, I just have to like process that for a minute. Like, remember how old Led Zeppelin felt in the 90s?
Ancient.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And now kids are like rediscovering fucking Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day and shit. And I'm just like,
I know.
Wow.
It's bizarre to think that the Aerosmith of the modern day is Smashing Pumpkins and MCR. You know what I mean?
It's wild. Anyway, but also like they're not wrong. Like that is great music regardless of the era. So
yeah.
Oh, I heard Smashing Pumpkins on the radio today, and I just thought, God, this singer has a really annoying voice. This is why I don't listen to this band.
Billy Corgan is like drinking a 10% IPA. Like, it's not for everyone, but those who like it really love it.
Yeah, sure. That's a
Totally
great analogy.
fair. But,
and it's probably an elder millennial / Gen Xer.
Sure.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, so the third story in this is incidentally a commentary on aging gracefully, which honestly, like I said, I'm all about that. So on the whole, all three of these shorts are about identity in a way and how we are perceived, which of course is the greatest horror of all. So good job, Archie team, on this horror anthology.
Oh man. You know, it's always great. I feel like when we find stories like this, we've said this a million times on the show, and I know, Kara, you've already got down this path of Archie BC. Like, I love that the Archie company continues to put out weird stories like this involving their characters, because it's so just like refreshing for folks who just like, I need a thing with a property but doesn't have any context or continuity. It's just a thing using these familiar tropes and things that I can already understand just from opening on page one. It's awesome. 100%. So awesome.
Yeah.
Mike, can I introduce you to Archie versus Sharknado? That's a one shot you could read.
How dare you?
No context.
How dare you do this to me?
I'm just going to pass it to Kara, and she could fill us in on the Archie one-shots that we should read and also tell us what she read this week.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, everybody. Similar to Tia, this week I choose violence. And so I feel like everything I'm going to say is going to make everybody mad for different reasons. This week I read and have to highly recommend the latest Minions comic, Mini Boss.
Kara.
Kara.
No, listen to me. I understand that they're the lowest common denominator of capitalism. I understand that
this is me frantically Googling what the hell is going on.
I understand that the Minions are also the worst representation of boomer culture on Facebook. I hear all of these things. I understand. Counterpoint. The Minions comics are some of the best comics on the market right now. I said it.
911 help. I'm scared.
So the Minions comics are like all ages, mostly nonverbal, slapstick, Looney Tune-esque antics in like 1-page stories, 2-page stories. I think the longest one in this book is 3 pages. And I have been reading all of the Minions comics for as long as they've been coming out, because they do them in like French style collections where they're like 50 pages each.
Mm-hmm.
The creative team on Minions Mini Boss is Renaud Collin and Stéphane Lapousse. So you gotta, like, sorry, but like you have a bunch of French creators making a like French style comic book. I'm going like, yes, it's great. So I really do like reading the most recent Minions collection. These are published in, it feels weird to say in English, but in English by Titan Comics.
Right.
They don't really speak English. They say banana papaya. Banana or papaya?
No.
You have to do it in the Anakin voice. Do it in the Anakin voice.
But I can't even do it. I'm laughing.
Kara. So they don't speak English.
Okay, so they speak like a minion language that the creator of them made up specifically to be like gibberish, but loosely based off of Romance languages. So like if you have even the barest knowledge of any Romance languages, you'll like pick out some of the words, and like there's some English words in there too, and of course the banana. But so this comic is sort of like a companion to the most recent Minions movie, Rise of Gru, in which we see Gru as like a kid growing up in the 70s, and the Minions find him because they want a new evil boss, and he basically like adopts them and like hides them in his basement for his first like evil lair away from his mom, who miraculously still voiced by Julie Andrews, by the way.
Okay.
So this comic, like, I genuinely think this is like in the same storytelling vein as some of like the Looney Tunes stuff, like before Looney Tunes had to be like, we don't use violence anymore. And it's like, no, you can still do some fun, like outrageous, over the top stuff. I have a few examples of some of like the weird stuff that they do in this comic that like genuinely made me laugh out loud. So it's stuff like the little minions, they get a basketball and they're so excited to play basketball, and on the basketball court is a character who is very clearly supposed to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar signing basketballs for the neighborhood kids who are like clamoring to meet him. And he like picks up this basketball from the Minions, signs it, gives it back to them, and they all immediately start crying and trying to scrub his signature off because they just want to play basketball and he's ruined their new ball. Or little Gru is standing outside his house and he sees an ice cream truck go by, and he like points at it and says ice cream, but he doesn't say the word ice cream in a speech bubble because, again, this is mostly like a nonverbal comic. He just has like a little speech bubble with a little ice cream cone in it. The Minions, like, they just want to make him happy, so they go after the ice cream truck, and you see them like going up to the ice cream truck, and then they come back and they're bringing Gru the ice cream display from the top of the ice cream truck. Like the three. Or like, absolutely my favorite one in this collection was Gru is taking a math test, and it's like a multiplication test. So he holds up a little card that like is asking the minions what 6 times 7 equals, and he like flashes it out the window because they're all sitting outside his classroom, and they furiously start like calculating what the answer is. And to send him the answer, they fire up a catapult and throw an enormous boulder into the classroom with the number 42 painted on the side of it.
I'm finding some of these comics in Google image search, and I understand your delight because they are stupidly adorable.
They're so delightful.
Being minions.
Like if the thing about the minions that bothers you is their like ubiquity or their character design, or you don't like the way that they've been animated, I recommend checking out these comics so that you can like kind of see where the appeal is, because the comics, I think, are frankly beautifully illustrated. They've got a great sense of movement. They've got wonderful, rich coloring. Like, I do think that they're hugely underrated. And every time I pick one up, I am just delighted. And because they're not bound by the constraints of having to do like a 90-minute children's movies, and it's just these little like gag vignettes, I really do think they shine in this format, and that they should just stop making movies and just do like little shorts or something like the Looney Tunes cartoons. Like that would be a better use of their strengths. But
I know that there's a bunch of comic strips that are like being dropped from all kinds of newspapers all over the country, but it seems like they would be better suited to like comic strips, like Peanut style.
Yeah.
Could you imagine opening the Sunday Funnies and it's just a half sheet of Minions comics? Like,
I would subscribe to that paper, Mike.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, but they're of this style and they're actually like good and entertaining. That'd be interesting. It's really funny because I was literally yesterday, I went to a farm to go just do like an outdoor farm thing, you know, and walk through a corn maze with Kelly. And the farm maze was Minion themed to the point. I'm going to post a link or an image of this in the Discord in a moment. That the actual maze itself had minions on it. Like there were minions throughout the thing in these little cart or like these wooden cutouts that they had painted. And the like actual maze itself was minions. They were leaning very hard into the idea that it was a Minions maze, like to the point that at the end you get to stand by a sign that said, "I completed the Von Thumb's Minions corn maze." It's they were all over the place. So this is serendipitous, I guess, that now I should go read the Minions comics, right?
Yeah, you can't escape it. You might as well read the best possible version.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess for me this week, I did not read anything that is of the season. I've got to give my review of Vanish really quick because I did talk about it last week on the show. I decided to see if the hype was real for the new Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman, JP Mayer, Sonia Oback, and John J. Hill comic book that came out. Danny is threatening me in the chat. He says, tread lightly. Well, I'll give you a quick summary in case you missed last week's episode. Oliver Harrison was a mythical hero who slayed the greatest threat to his realm before even hitting puberty, but that was then. Then he has, after he grew up, his life sucks, but the baddies of his past are back, and he has no choice but to get back into the game using his magical powers. I will say I gave this a solid 3 out of 5 on the Comixology app when I read it. Okay superhero comics that are okay is pretty much what you can expect from Image Comics at this point. See also Spawn, Radiant Black. They are superhero books. They try to approach superhero stories in different ways, and you know, I think that ultimately, like, I'm not the audience for quote gritty fucked up guy decides he has to be even darker than his darkest darkness, you know, like this is why Spawn was never my thing. This is why some of those super dark Batman stories aren't for me. You know, anytime we twist really hard into like, let's be grim and gritty and the darkest of whatever, like I find that to be just either overplayed or just not as impressive as maybe the author or the creators were getting at. Like this is why Johnny Cates and Ryan Stegman's Null stuff never worked. The Venom stuff didn't really work for me. I tried a couple of issues, just not my thing. I think overall there's some smidgens of interesting stuff in this book. Like I gave it a 3 out of 5, so it's not a bad book by any means. I think there's a really interesting backstory in like a magic school gone bad with a former savior turned dirtbag. The art in this book is pretty solid. I mean, Stegman and Mayer and Oback, they do like some of the more interesting, beautiful, like superhero stuff that I've seen in a long time. Lots of dark, gritty cross hatching and stuff too, which is not unexpected, but it's a really, really gorgeous book. Like there are some 2-page spreads in this that are just mind blowing to look at. And I mean, I'm looking at it on an iPad, but like I have to imagine, like even looking at it on paper, these things are really, really impressive. It reminds me a lot of the more impressive side of the Spawn stuff. I think some of the things I've seen from Greg Capullo also kind of hit this same vein of just being incredibly impressive pieces of art. They're just not the thing that I think about being like super cool and super amazing that I want to own and physically have and look at all day. So like while this book looks really good, like I can respect it, I just don't think it's totally my thing. I'm probably not going to check out the next issue of this series, but I will likely check out the trade when it hits Hoopla, because I think that there are some seeds at the beginning of this book that are interesting, but the constant reflection back on the I've got to do the worst thing I've ever, like there's just so much. I don't know. It feels so try hard. Like I get you're trying to be dark and grim and gritty. You can do that without the character constantly being like mad. I don't know. It's really wild. And you're gonna shit your pants, because when I talk about my comic pick for this upcoming week, you're gonna be mad. But either way, I don't know. This ultimately comes down to the decision that I need to make of dropping books that I don't enjoy because I'm complaining about this. I'm not going to read the next one. But at the same time, I don't drop other books that I just don't really care for. And yet I read the first couple of issues and now I'm like, well, I got to read it to the end at least. That's not a good reason to keep reading books. So that's just a reminder for me.
Don't attack me, Mike.
I think we all have this problem sometimes, right?
I was thinking about that recently because I actually am the opposite. Like I have no sunk cost guilt whatsoever. I am halfway out the door in literally everything that I do.
I mean, I respect that, because I feel like I'm the opposite. If I try a book, I've at least got to try the first arc. I do that thing when really I should say I don't really care for this number one and drop it. Like I never should have continued reading Radiant Black, and here I am 14 issues later where that book goes from like really good comic to absolute garbage every other week, and it's really hard to keep to drop a book that consistently hits as much as it misses. That's the really weird thing.
So I'm good just reading the first volume of Radiant Black and never thinking about it again.
Oh, you thought the first volume was good?
I read it and I was like, oh, I see why people are like buzzing about this.
Yeah, there is a hype to it, right? Like you totally can feel that. And it's so funny because as the story goes on, that second arc has some of the best superhero comics I've read in a long time and some of the worst superhero comics I've read in a long time. It's bizarre. It's like Kyle Higgins, for all of his, like everything that he's done well with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and all this other stuff, it's like he just had bad months or bad weeks when he was writing this book, and then really good weeks. So I don't know. It's bizarre. I would almost say if you can get it without having to pay for it through like a Hoopla or whatever, like check out volume 2, but don't feel like it's a must read. That's my recommendation on that.
Okay, that's fair.
One other book I want to talk about real quick before we get into top of our pile. I did read Time Before Time, number 16. This is Declan Shalvey and Rory McConville back on writing together. Eric Zawadsky on art with colors by Chris O'Halloran, letters by Hassan Otsmani Elhau. I mean, this is one of my favorite books, so I'm really biased. And then, that being said, I'm not going to spoil anything for the series. We're pretty far along in a pretty complex storyline that I think has been executed really well and super well paced with like really smart breaks to add more flavor to the ongoing, really interesting story already. I love how this book is suspenseful, low sci-fi. It's got plenty of twists and turns, all the while playing with its core concept of time travel without falling prey to tropes, without falling into like uninspired tropes. Like there's going to be tropes when it comes to time travel and things that just exist from like the zeitgeist of science fiction. But I feel like Time Before Time sidesteps a lot of that in order to use bits and pieces of those tropes without making their whole story about Doctor Who style tropes or, like you can't change the past, blah, blah, blah. Like there's none of that. The story is about Tetsuo as a character rather than just like the intricacies of time travel itself. I find it really smart the way that Shalvey and McConville have written this book. And the beauty of a series like this, and I think some other solid Image ongoings like Farmhand and Department of Truth, is that you never know where the final arc is, when it's going to be coming. When you're on a series like Time Before Time, 16 issues in, could this be the last arc? You don't know. Like, the story is at a point that it could end at this arc, or they could keep going because they have other threads that they could pull on that they've hinted at or have only slightly wrapped up. I like this idea of like, could this book go on forever? But I don't really want it to. And I think McConville and Shelby have found themselves in a perfect sweet spot, as if they ended it now, everyone would be happy. If they kept going for another 16 issues, everyone would be happy. And I really have to applaud them for doing such a good job of this series. Like, I'm missing Joe Palmer's art on this series. He was the original artist that started the book, but not knowing why anything's happening behind the scenes. This could be like a temporary sidestep in order to tell the arc a certain way. This book has done a really good job of changing artists with intent. So when they want to do like a side story about a bunch of different characters, we get a different artist to focus on those characters. So when we come back to the Joe Palmer on the series, we know that we're back in the main storyline. Now, Eric Zawadzki is on the current arc that's telling the main storyline, but that could be for a specific reason, which I'm not going to go into because of spoilers. But either way, the thing that I really love about this book is that they found pencilers from Palmer to Zawadzki, PJ Holden to Ron Salas, that keep a consistent feel to the book. And I will say that's likely because of the amazing color work by Chris O'Halloran, but nonetheless, like the artists or the pencilers that they've picked for this book have kept the same vibe. And I know that that's really hard to do, but somehow they've managed to do it. Even when Shelby stepped in to do a one-shot, it all felt the same. So it's probably more Chris O'Halloran than anything else. But overall, I just love this book. This is like my go-to suggestion for people when I don't think they'll vibe with Department of Truth. So yeah, I fucking love Time Before Time. And if you're not reading it, I'm sorry, but you've made a mistake. So anyways, let's talk about comics on the top of our pile, and let's see what you're reading next. Kara, Tia, I'm excited to hear what you both have upcoming on your plate, so let's just dive into it, and we'll start with you, Kara. What's on the top of your pile?
Mike has chosen me to go first for top of my pile because I tried to be a little weasel and get out of picking one, and he called me out before the show and made me write down a name.
Listen, what happens before we hit record stays before we hit record, okay, Kara?
Okay, I'll give my pick now, and then I'll tack on some additional thoughts after Tia shares her pick. And I will also take this opportunity, Michael, to ask if you have an X-Men book that I should read, because I realized recording my baseball special with Renee that I don't actually have. Like, I've read some X-Men stuff, but I read like the run that was briefly going on where like the team was all ladies around the time the Storm comic was being published, and like Jubilee was a vampire mom, which should have been more interesting than it was, frankly. And
well, that's a whole other discussion, but yeah, tell us about your pick, and I'll meander in my mind a little bit. As
I don't need something right now. I just figure you're the best possible person to ask. And if any listeners have an X-Men comic that I should read that is not Age of Apocalypse, because I already read that. Don't want to.
We're not talking X-Men classics. We're talking actual good comic books.
Yeah, somebody tell me something to read, and if you tell me the Joss Whedon run, I'll just die. So just
Kira, I've already got my pick. We'll get into it once we get after the break. How about that?
So once I actually put my title down, Mike just immediately started laughing because apparently this title is funny. It is Uncle Scrooge, The Golden Nugget Boat by Carl Barks. He laughed again.
What is that title? What does that even mean?
Look, it's a boat full of golden nuggets, or it's a golden boat full of chicken nuggets. I don't know, Mike. Right. I haven't read the book yet.
Okay.
All right. This is continuing my journey into the excellent Fantagraphics editions of classic Disney comics. So a lot of people who are into like mid-century comics like are of the general opinion that Carl Barks is one of the best comic artists of the 20th century. Like, even if you don't like Disney, even if you don't like that whole thing, it is pretty undeniable that Carl Barks is one of the most talented visual storytellers of the comic book medium. And so Fantagraphics has been publishing this really lovely hardcover collection of his comics, especially he created a lot of the duck characters that if you've seen an episode of DuckTales, you know and love. Carl Barks created the character of Uncle Scrooge that was later then a cartoon character on the animation side of things. And basically, like, I've talked about these comics before. They're lovely because the ducks are basically humans, except that they're ducks. Like, they're going on adventures. The stories honestly feel like kind of Tintin adjacent to me.
Yeah.
Because they're like these sort of adventure format comics, like especially the Uncle Scrooge ones, because he is the richest duck. So he's just like, I want to go treasure hunting. So it's like, if you like the genre of stories that are like Indiana Jones, where he's like, I'm an archaeologist, and you're like, you, sir, are the worst archaeologist. This is very like rich dude does what he wants, which in modern parlance we're like, ew. But at the time it was like, oh, that's so cool. I would love to have a swimming pool full of gold that I could swim in. As you do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Golden Nugget boat is the most recent volume of this collection that Fantagraphics has published, and it introduces the character Magica Dispel, who, if you saw the DuckTales, either the original show or the reboot, which if you haven't seen the reboot, prioritize that immediately because it's some of the best television of the last decade. I said it. And I would like to see this character's origin story and see the difference between the show and the comic book character. So that's why I purchased this book. These hardcover formats are sort of like collections of stories, because again, these comics were like mid-century Disney comics, so they were being published in floppies, and maybe there would be like 2 or 3 stories in like 30 pages of books. So they're like little nuggets of stories, if you will.
Okay.
Sorry, that one was a stretch. So I'm excited to read this book. I pre-ordered it a few months ago from Fantagraphics, which if you are not familiar, Fantagraphics does do like pre-order sales more or less every season, where they're like, pre-order this book and we'll give you like 20% off. I'm like, okay. So that's my pitch. Support Fantagraphics.
Interesting. I just Googled Magica Dispel, and I see that Catherine Tate did her voice most recently, which is very exciting because I like Catherine Tate. But Tia, what about you? What are you excited for? What's on the top of your pile?
Well, when I was finished reading the horror anthology from Archie, there was an ad in the back for the Chilling Adventures of Salem.
Oh my God.
That's going to come out October 12th, which I know is a few weeks away, but I still felt warranted discussion because cat.
Not only that, but a magical cat.
The cover that they're using for this book is insane.
It's so good. So it's going to be by Cullen Bunn and Dan Shaning, and it promises to be like an old 80s horror pulp paperback style one shot.
Cool.
And there's a quote from Cullen Bunn from horrornewsnetwork.net where he says he wanted to lean into the charm of Sabrina's cat in telling this tale, and also didn't want to forget about like the humorous origins, but wanted to take those elements to a really dark place. So Salem is a talking cat, yes, but he's devious and sneaky and ruthless in the pursuit of his goals, an anti-hero. And I'm like, okay, so basically all cats. Got it.
Yeah.
Cats. Because cats are ridiculous, but also devious and sneaky and ruthless in the pursuit of their goals.
Am I going to ruin this for you by telling you that Salem is actually a human trapped in a cat's body?
No, I know that that's true, but all cats are humans trapped in a cat's body, so it's fine.
The truth, finally
God.
revealed on I Read Comic Books today.
You are all talking about lizard people, but you really had to worry about the people cats.
The people cats. Oh, man. Well, that sounds a little like really fun. Honestly, I didn't know that was coming out, and I am definitely going to snag a copy of that because why not? It's Cullen Bunn. Like, Cullen Bunn knows how to do horror, but also this is a ridiculous concept, so I'm in for it.
Support the cats.
I'm going to add in some Archie horror notes here. So there's an Archie holiday special coming up in a couple months that the cover of which is just like the classic Archie, Betty, Veronica triangle, but Betty and Veronica are kissing like a skull with a little tuft of red hair on top of it. So it's just like, you know, Archie Comics is like, oh, horror is the moneymaker. We're a horror comics publisher now. So they do these different variations of things. And like, it's spooky season. I should be reading more Archie horror. Like, I never actually here's my big confession. I never actually got around to reading Jughead the Hunger because I thought it was I thought it was a cannibalism book and I had no interest in that. But then while reading about other upcoming stories, I realized it's a werewolf book, and that's much more my line. I can do that. Or like
wolves eating people, that's okay, but humans eating people,
you know what?
No way.
Look, I genuinely can't remember if I read the Vampironica stories where they're basically like, it's Vampirella, it's Veronica. Because you know what it was? I did read the crossover between Betty and Veronica and Vampirella. Like, that was a comic book I did read, but I'd never read the Vampironica one. Anyway, so there's just like a whole world that I can dive into. And Tia's book reading picks sparked that. And now I know what I can be getting into for October.
I mean, Jughead the Hunger is a confusing title because isn't the film The Hunger about vampires?
I guess it's just any kind of non-normal food-based appetite. You can make it sound sinister by being like, the hunger.
Right.
Oh my God. Somebody needs to do a humorous Archie horror series about what you just described. Only do it in the style of that UK show about people who eat weird stuff. Like there's that lady who would only eat French fries.
That's me. That's me, Tia. I only eat French fries.
Do it like a TLC reality show style.
But like actually use the actors from Riverdale to do it.
Oh my God.
Right?
Except for the one who just went to jail for murdering his mom.
Okay, he was in like literally 2 episodes. And
He's not main cast. He's not main cast.
He's a little obnoxious of all the media to just be like Riverdale actor. I was like, he was on there for like a second. But okay, go off.
Let's pull up his IMDb and find the most recent thing that he was on so that we can put it in the title. Well, for me this week, I guess before I get into my pick, we've got some folks hanging out with us on Discord. Danny is going to be reading, this is what's on the top of their pile, I should say. Danny's going to be reading Hell is a Squared Circle #1 from Aftershock. Paul G is going to be reading Barry Windsor Smith's Monsters, which has been on my forever to read list since it came out. And Stephanie is going to be reading Fade Out Volume 1 to continue their journey through all of the Brubaker and Phillips run. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, because the Fade Out to me is one of their less impressive books. Not to say that it's not impressive, but it is the least impressive of their other stuff. So curious to hear your thoughts on that. But for me this week, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to fight you on that. And then I realized I could not tell you a single thing about the Fade Out. I was like, wait, the Fade Out was good. I can't remember anything about it. So it's not as good as I thought.
You know, to not spoil it for Stephanie. I mean, we can talk about it in the break, but there's some like icky moments in that book that I'm like, I know you want to talk about old Hollywood, but you also didn't necessarily have to do this. It's a whole other discussion. But anyways, my pick for this week, or I guess the top of my pile for this week, is Old Dog #1. This is written and drawn by Declan Shelvey with letters by Clayton Coles. I mean, what's better than Declan writing about big old dudes, you know, bog body, savage town, you can't go wrong, which is really unfortunate because that's exactly what Vanish #1 was about, but I just don't really think I like Donny Cates' writing. So the synopsis here is Old Dog follows Jacqueline's a once promising CIA operative on the eve of retirement. Looking back at a failed career, he is tasked with one final mission that goes horribly wrong. He wakes years later to a changed world and even deeper changes within him. When a shadowy group offers Lynch a second chance for a life and adventure, he finds himself paired with the last person he could ever imagine. In order to adjust, this old dog will have to learn some new tricks. Like, this is going to be an angry man gets angry about change, which is pretty much kind of bullshit that makes an easy comic to read. Like, so we'll see. All in one package deal from Shelby should be interesting because in his previous works that he's done as writing, he's usually had an artist. So I'll decide if this should have been an OGN or not. More to come next week, I guess, after I read it. But this is one of those things where I'm like, why didn't you just make an OGN? Who knows? But maybe, I don't know. I like Shelby's writing, clearly. Time Before Time, one of my favorite books right now. So I'm hoping that this is a pretty good one. The cover looks aggressive as hell, so it should be fun. But yeah, I guess we'll take a quick break here and talk about revisit a topic from episode 48 of I Read Comic Books. It's more of a title than anything, but I think Tia mentioned it in the episode on her very first episode. Sexy bad boys, are they bad? Sexy bad babies, who are they and why do we love them so much? So we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to talk about that after. We'll be right back. Today on I Read Comic Books, we're going to be talking about, or maybe asking a question. Sexy bad boys, are they bad? This is a revisit from episode 48, like I said before the break. Way back in the day, it was me and Tia and Zander on the episode. I don't think the episode was actually about sexy bad babies, but it was brought up enough that, it warranted the title. So I guess, Tia, could you give us a little bit of a breakdown as to what exactly we mean by like sexy bad babies or sexy bad boys, bad boys and all that kind of stuff that maybe brings up a lot of different pictures for people? What are we talking about here today?
Yes. Okay. And I actually just recently excavated a bunch of discourse on this that I wrote on my Tumblr about Baphomet and the Wicked and the Divine. And I really break it down, and I'm trying to find, if I find the links to those posts again, I'll drop them in the show notes. But basically, these are boys who are shitheads, and they're bad, and they're mean, and they don't give a fuck. And women really like that about them because of a few reasons. If you can make them like you, then you're special, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can fix them and soothe their tragic backstory,
Lies,
which gives you a lot of power. And then also the third thing, which I think is not talked about as much as the first two, and you even ask in the show notes, are there sexy bad girls? No, there are not, because to be a sexy bad girl is inherently political, which means that you inherently give a shit. But one of the foundational traits of the sexy bad boy is that he does not give a shit. And so that is an appealing thing that women cannot have. And so by possessing the sexy bad boy, you by proxy get to experience that don't give a fuckness as he protects you from the consequences of his, if that makes sense. Of course, that's
Absolutely.
all a fantasy. Like, that never actually plays out that way.
Right. We're talking about in fiction.
Like, Padme Amidala has entered the chat. But
I want to make it extremely clear as to all the listeners that the people that we're describing would be terrible in real life, and you should never, ever, ever want to be in a relationship with somebody like this, because they will not change. You cannot fix them. And this
Go to
is
therapy.
Go to therapy. This is the kind of thing that leads to abuse dynamics in some situations. But in fiction, escapism.
Right.
And these are, to be clear again, once more for the listeners, you should not be emulating these people.
No.
We're listing, I think we're going to talk about a lot of comic book and TV characters and movie characters and things that show these traits, but in real life, they are not good things. They are attractive in fiction because of the control over it. And Tia, Kara, I'm sure you have better words for this than I do, but because there is you are choosing to consume these things. You are willingly in engaging in this fiction or whatever. It's not as harmful as people in real life doing these things, where there is no way to control them, right?
Why do you think the only reason the book publishing industry still exists is because romance novels sell like hotcakes? We don't actually want all of these things to happen, but it's fun to read about.
Right.
Well, it serves a purpose because it lets you explore those parts of yourself, right? The power dynamics and the things that are unavailable to you in real life as a woman.
It's like a safe space to explore the darkness.
There's a reason why women are the main audience for yaoi and doujinshi. That is predominantly a lot of gay couples, and why a lot of shipping is with gay couples.
Mm-hmm. Typically male, or female, right?
Because then there's an inherent equality to the power dynamic betwone them that just does not exist.
And I also think that there's a really appealing way that everyone look, take Kylo Ren for an example.
Let's take Kylo Ren for
I know,
example.
Right?
Why is Kylo Ren a bad boy, Tia?
Well, I mean, because he all the murder, but and the temper tantrums.
I would say the temper tantrums more than the murder. Like, you can be a murderer and not be a sexy bad boy.
Sure.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
but in fiction, you get that a lot, right? Like, and there's such a spectrum of them. But everyone around Kylo Ren bends over backwards to take care of him, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even General Hux.
Especially General
Hux.
You know, like, so yeah, I think that one of the main reasons why women love sexy bad babies is partly because it gives them power to feel loved by them, and the other reason is because it lets them occupy this space that is like politically not available to them.
And so, you know, as we're thinking about a lot of these characters, I mean, like, I think you've gotten your notes here. There is a scale. Could you explain the scale that you've gotten for these types of characters?
The scale from I can fix him to you murdered how many younglings?
Mm-hmm. And I guess
walk out of this.
Right. What is this scale for, I guess? Because like we said, there's a difference between just being like a cold-hearted murderer in a story and being like a hunk who's also killed a bunch of people, and for some reason that is attractive, versus just like, you know, someone with a gun, you know, shooting people, you know. Where does that line get drawn? I mean, obviously the context of the fiction in the story, you know, helps a lot, but still, like, we have this scale. Where do we rate people?
I have a comic book example that explores a nuance around this, if you will. So
yeah.
All right, so let's hop over to the Batverse, people, because
please,
Batman should be a sexy bad boy, but is not. Batman is possibly one of the least sexy characters in the DC universe.
That is so true.
Right.
But what about the Michael Janin drawings? Come on.
He is
anyways
so deeply unsexy. Like,
okay.
And then we contrast him with the second Robin, Jason Todd. Not when he was Robin. He was like the troubled kid, and Batman like found him on the streets when he was trying to steal tires off the Batmobile. Like, that's how he found Jason Todd, and was like, I'm going to take this troubled youth and turn him into a hero. And then the Joker murdered him because of one dude who had auto dial on his phone in the 80s. Anyway, so Jason Todd got resurrected in the mid 2000s as the Red Hood and got kind of his own identity, like Dick Grayson got Nightwing as his own identity. And the Red Hood Jason Todd version like showed up to like murder people and make Batman notice him. Senpai, notice me. And Jason Todd was like, I wear a leather jacket and ride a motorcycle and I'm tough and angry and stuff. And literally all of my friends who were girls at the time who read comic books and liked the bad boy archetype were like swooning over Jason Todd. I'm actually a poser on this episode because I actually don't really get that into the bad boy archetype. I'm just here to support Tia. but it's like I enjoy reading about the sexy bad boy in the way that I really enjoy reading things that are like super genre specific and super tropey, but I'm not like swoon over the bad guy. Like, I had a crush on Agent Coulson in the Avengers movies. Like, I am about as like like normal boy gold-hearted sense of humor as you can get. But like,
I think we're gonna have to stop recording and come back with someone else.
No, but like, I love the character type, because like once you know what type you're dealing with, you kind of know what story you're in, and it's just like tropey romance stuff is so crazy. Anyway, so Jason Todd is like totally like would have been a sort of Byronic anti-hero if he was in anything other than a Batman comic book. So but like, again, in that same Bat family, you have sexy bad boy Jason Todd. I can fix him. Look at him. He's wearing a leather jacket. He just punched someone. He has so many feelings. He's so angry. Ugh. And so the contrast with Batman, where you're just like, this billionaire dude who has issues is not attractive. Why? Why can't they make him attractive?
So I think he's too paternal. You know what I mean? Like he is a self-insert for your dad. I think.
But we
Batman,
all have
like,
daddy issues, so like,
right.
We should.
Okay, well,
that.
I guess if you have daddy issues, maybe that's a totally different thing.
I mean, like, look at the. Okay, I'm going to talk about Rings of Power here for a second, but like, they literally call him Lord Father Come on.
Right.
Come on. The AO3 tag writes itself.
Wait, is this Star Wars or Rings of Power?
Rings of Power.
Okay.
I mean, we could also be talking about Star Wars.
Could also be.
Yeah, I mean, Darth Father at the same time, right?
I'm really trying to get Lord Daddy as a tag for Adair content on Tumblr off the ground.
I love it. I would say, now that we brought up Star Wars several times, I actually don't think Anakin / Darth Vader is sexy. I think Kylo Ren is sexy.
No, Anakin's not sexy. He's too petulant.
Yeah, Anakin is not a sexy bad boy.
But this is where the scale comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because on paper, looking at these characters, they kind of fit the same niche in like a simple way. But when you actually evaluate the characters from like all of the work that is there, Anakin turns into this, like you said, this petulant dude, whereas Kylo Ren continues to be this like broken, whiny dude that doesn't actually step completely into I'm just a murderer for the sake of murdering, which from what I'm understanding is the more attractive side of things. I don't know. So
here's the thing. I think that it has to do with the way that they interact with their respective female leads, because Anakin is always going to be the little like child compared to Padme in their dynamic. Like I just can never unsee that. Whereas the way that Rey and I know the Reylo, like, don't come for me, Reylo haters, like just calm down. But like the way that Rey and Kylo Ren have their dynamic where it is more of a give and take, like there are moments of equality, or like the power shifts over to her sometimes, like spoilers for the crybabies who still haven't seen a movie that's like 10,000 years old, but like the way that there are specific ways that she does fix him and she does save him, and we get to see that,
right?
Whereas Padme totally fails at that, right? Like he objectifies her to murder the younglings, but she never saves him, so we never get the payoff of his being a sexy bad baby.
Like if they had played there are so many problems with the prequels, which I've discussed on this show many times, but in this particular conversation, the thing that didn't work about the Star Wars prequel movies is that Anakin and Padme did not make sense as a relationship. They didn't really talk about it. They glossed over all the parts that would have made it compelling and like added to this sexy bad boy dynamic. Like you never really see why he's essentially like giving up this entire piece of his identity to like furtively be married to this woman. Like he's like, they never really talk about that. And if they had made the focus like the romance and been like, this man is literally willing to dissolve the galaxy for the love of this woman, like that would have been a very different film.
Because it was never for Padme. He has mommy issues, and it was for his mother the whole time. I
mean, I also think, Tia, to your point, if Anakin, if they had, again, it literally came down to casting. If they had cast an older actor as young Anakin to make them almost seem like they were the same age, it wouldn't have been as weird.
They had to,
but instead, we have this Natalie Portman who's like, what, in her 20s in the first movie? I don't know. And then we've got this 12-year-old Jake Lloyd.
Anakin is 9 and Padme is 14 when they first meet.
Right.
I'm sorry, but
it
doesn't work.
But if they had been 14 and 14, right? Like, and then they don't see each other for a decade, and then they come back, and then suddenly it's like, then we're talking about a totally different romantic story, right? Sure. Like this spark that they had as children, and then they grow up to adult. Like it makes sense there. I think the age difference from 14 to 9 is very
it's profound. There's a quote that I don't remember where I read it, and I'm sorry to the person who coined it, but it goes, a hero will sacrifice you to save the world. A villain will sacrifice the world to save you. And I think what happens with where like Anakin breaks down as the sexy bad baby is that he doesn't save her. He actually kills her.
Oh yeah, that's very big like, line through that character on this list. Well, Tia, you were talking about this originally in terms of your like analysis about Baphomet as a character. That's a comic book character. Will you tell the listeners at home about the Wicked and the Divine?
God, it's been so long.
Why is
Literally-
Baphomet a great, sexy bad boy?
Well, because he is really just a sad boy underneath his badness.
Yeah, I think Kieran Gillen does a great job of writing that character where he wants so badly to be the bad boy, right? When we finally get moments with him alone, he is just this fragile little thing. But then coming out of those moments, he has to go back to putting on this show of who he is. I think that is one of the more compelling pieces of Wicked and Divine and other stories that use this type of character, where you get moments where they are not that person. You get to see a little bit behind that veneer or that veil that they've put up. You understand who they are. Now, that doesn't necessarily redeem them, because they usually, these types of characters typically commit atrocities. But at the same time, from like the perspective of reading it, you actually get to see a little bit who they are, and that adds to this like allure of these types of characters, right?
The other thing with Baphomet is that he's really defined, like Baphomet and Morgan, or Cameron and Marion, as they are as people, like they're really defined in the story by their relationship to each other. They have a really fucked up relationship, and they both really thrive on that, because what they both feel kind of banal. They both feel like they're not special. They both feel like there's just nothing really to them. So they really go hard on the goth like persona, and their relationship is really dramatic because it's this grand stage production. They don't actually have really any emotional intimacy, which you see in the book. Like Marion had a childhood illness that she never shared with him until he's having an emotional crisis. And then she brings it up as a way to like pull him back in close to her, like as a tool of manipulation. So sexy bad babiness, I think, like definitely exists in a dynamic where it takes two.
I also want to take this opportunity, since we've been saying like, oh, and they have like the one like emotional moment and you feel like drawn to them again. I'm like, yes, this is a textbook like abusive relationship dynamic where you keep telling yourself, oh, but the one good thing, therefore all of the bad things are fine. They're not fine. They are not fine. Stop falling for the one good thing.
Listen, I learned this the very hard way in high school, and also like last year, that when men are dark and brooding and quiet, it's not because they're thinking deep thoughts. There's literally no thoughts behind those eyes, like none.
Let's talk about Edward Cullen.
We got there, folks.
But what I think that goes back to what I was saying, that like it takes two to create this dynamic, because we as women look at them and we create these like really rich inner worlds that, rather than owning because we made them up, we assign them to the sexy bad baby who is less constrained by the political position of being woman. Ooh, like, so we just give it all away to them, and they don't deserve it, and they have nothing in there. Like, they're basically just these like self-insert characters who play with gender, but they're really us. They don't talk about their feelings. And so then when they punch stuff or murder younglings, we're like, oh, they're expressing their feelings. No, there's no thoughts in there. None.
You're just explained why I like The Witcher so much. Witcher season 1. Henry Cavill's just grunting. No, I brought up Edward Cullen, first of all, because there is a Twilight manga, therefore he counts as a comic book character.
Right.
Second of all, because the whole like, Tia talking about when you don't have an awareness of the inner self, you can just kind of project whatever you want. So almost like an interesting dynamic flip of that. Like, Edward Cullen is attracted to Bella Swan because he can't read her thoughts.
Yes. Ooh.
Yeah.
Like that attractiveness exists because he can't manipulate her, right?
No, because he's just like, well, she then becomes whatever he wants her to be, because anything she doesn't like actively communicate to him, he just has no idea what's going on in there.
And she does have the communication skills of a teenage boy. It's true.
I was going to say a plank of wood, but you're just
same
generous.
thing. But we repeat ourselves. We're going to get so much hate mail from men. Look, listen, I'm sorry. I'm not even going to apologize. Own it. Okay. Like, we're on to you. And listen, we love you anyway, right? So like, take some heart, but just like do some work.
I mean, when thinking about this episode topic, I was like, oh my God, this is just going to like bring out the people in the woodwork who are just like, girls only want sexy bad boys, and I don't know why. I'm a nice guy. Why won't they like me, man? Like, that's not the point. We don't actually like these guys in real life.
Also, you're not that nice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this gets into like a whole other side of things of like self-identifying as a nice guy, but like still holding on to your problematic thought patterns and stuff. Just because you do a nice thing doesn't mean that you're necessarily a nice person.
You don't.
That's a whole other thing.
I have a thought. Is this is not to bring everything back to the X-Men and steal Mike's thunder on
Please.
this episode, but I personally have always considered Gambit to be in the sexy bad boy category.
Gambit is a great sexy bad boy.
I mean, I didn't want to make it all about me this episode, so yeah, I mean, he is. I totally agree. Totally. I would love to hear your thoughts before I take over this conversation unintentionally.
Well, it's what Tia was talking about of in a lot of ways, like the sexy bad boy is kind of in a romance dynamic with another character, and the Gambit rogue tension, like I don't even know a lot about it, but I know that that's a sexy bad boy dynamic.
100%.
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing as the Edward Cullen Bella thing, right? Where Gambit is a seductive man who is, and I'm not saying that that's his whole character, but that is a thing, that he is dating women or has been with many women and all that stuff. And it's playing off this idea that he is he's a player who can get any woman that he wants, in heavy quotes. But then when it comes to Rogue, there is this mutual attraction between the two of them, but there's this physical limitation between the two of them that, like, if they try to be intimate in any capacity, it could kill them. Therefore, it makes the relationship even stronger, or like lustier. It's not strong, but it's lustier, right? Because there's this forbidden thing that you can't do, lest you literally die, right? And what is more lusty than the potential of death?
But also it goes back to the psychological thing that we were talking about, where you can just self-insert any fantasy you have about the person because you will never know the truth about them.
Exactly. And I mean, that is explored more on many comics. I think that Kelly Thompson's Rogue and Gambit series is probably the perfect Rogue and Gambit story that you could ever read. I don't care what anyone says. I think she does a great job of nailing their relationship dynamic. When they have the opportunity to actually be together, they have to overcome that, like, I thought about you this way for so long, bit of their relationship, and actually see if it can work. And if it can work, like, what are the, issues that you have to overcome after that. It's a fucking great book. But yeah, I mean, Gambit is that character, and I think he's been written that way for a really long time. Less so more recently, because I think that character trope comes with a lot of really problematic things. And I think Marvel's trying to lean a different direction with that character and make him more of a thief and less of a ladies' man,
Stealing hearts.
I was gonna say, that's kind of a loss. Like, they should really just give him to a romance author and let her go crazy.
It just proves that the Marvel top brass does not know how to attract audiences outside of themselves.
No, hold on a second. They have replaced Gambit's playboy nature with Daken, who is Wolverine's, or Daken, I don't know how you say his name. I say Daken. Wolverine's son, who is this like bisexual, I was going to say maniac. That's not the right word, but he is definitely constantly lusting after men and women all throughout the comics.
But like, that's
he shows up in
what we want.
That's not this thing. That's not this thing.
I guess, because I guess it's a different thing. Yeah, there is less of a
that's James
sexy
Bond.
Bad
That's
boy.
not Gambit.
Yeah. True. James Bond does not fit this, though, right?
He does not. He is not sexy. He's sexy to men. Men think he's sexy.
Right. Okay. This is something that Danny threw a screenshot of Michael Janen's art from Batman into the chat, and I was like, no, like, those are attractive people, but that art is for men. That is not for women. So yeah, it's
too many abs, not enough heart.
Right. And there's nothing to say that, like, if you're attracted to that, like, there's anything wrong with you. We're not saying that, but like, that type of beefcake thing is typically drawn more for male readers and people who find that thing, I guess, attractive, which is not necessarily all women, despite what many men may think, that women only want big beefcake dudes. Those dudes are doing that not for anyone, but to impress other men, right? For the most part.
Yes.
But anyways, okay. Well, I guess final summation here. Final thoughts on sexy bad boys. Are they bad? Are they good? I don't know. Tia, what are your final thoughts here?
Well, I'll just reiterate that It's a really bad idea to engage with these dynamics in real life. As fun as it may be, I would consider it a form of self-harm, and you should probably like go to therapy.
Keep it to the fiction.
Yeah, it's fun in fiction.
It's like, that said, go ham on the fiction. Like, do all the fiction.
Yeah. Write your own fiction, you know?
We've done that, Mike.
Yeah.
Any depth that you assign to like the sort of brooding, quiet men in your life, like that's you. You are the thing that makes them exciting.
I love that. That's beautiful, Tia.
I love that too. Yeah, Kara, final thoughts?
Final thoughts, not comic book related, but okay. So Tia already knows this because I yelled about this to her, and talking about not feeling the need to finish a book when it's bad. Tia was like, Kara, just stop reading this book. And I was like, no. Mm-hmm. So there's this terrible, like truly terrible in so many ways, Twilight ripoff book series, the first of which is called Crave. And I'm halfway through it, and I can only listen to the audiobook in like 30-minute sprints because it's so bad. It makes me actively angry. And then I text Tia about it, and she tells me to stop, and I tell her no. Right. So the boy, the sexy boy in this book almost immediately is like, right, what I was saying about I appreciate like really tropey genre fiction, and right away like the girl shows up, her parents have just died at the fancy mystery academy in the middle of the wilderness in Alaska, and pretty much the first person she meets is the boy, and he's got like broad shoulders, and he's tall, and he has dark hair falling in his face, and he's got dark eyes that look at you intensely, and he's got cut cheekbones that you could cut glass on, and he's got puffy lips and all this expression. And this description was so over the top and so clearly like Edward Cullen, but better, that my brain just started superimposing that like one screen grab from SpongeBob where it's like sexy Squidward, where he's got like a strong jaw.
As soon as you started describing that, that's the first thing I was thinking of.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Like, this dude is sexy Squidward. So, oh my God, his name is Jackson with an X because he's extreme.
Why?
Oh my God.
This is what I'm saying. Like, there's also a range of like good bad boy fiction and bad boy fiction. I would put this in the latter category, but I'm still reading it because it's making me laugh.
Sounds almost as bad as that Rogue book that they published that I read.
That I made you read. Rogue
that you
Touch.
made me read. It was not a hard force, but I definitely was forced into reading it.
The dude in that book, I forget the exact description, but in my head, he became this guy that I saw working at a Hot Topic one time, where I just so desperately wanted to go up to him and introduce him to the concept of hair conditioner. Because whatever he had done to his hair, he had like whatever Severus Snape is doing, the opposite of that was this poor dude's longish hair. Like, just if your hair is frizzy, good sirs, please try a good hair mask. I beg. That's
quite a final thought. Tia, Kara, I appreciate you both bringing this topic back to my attention. I have lots to think of, though. I feel that after almost 300 episodes since we recorded episode 48, I feel like I have learned and grown and understand this idea a lot more than when I did way back then. So I think the both of you to thank for that, as well as the rest of the other folks on the show that are constantly trying to enlighten me, this still uncultured boy who hosts this show. So thank you both for doing this episode today with me. Next week, me and Kate are going to be revisiting a yearly favorite. It's that time of year, fall vibes, but comic books, and Kate are going to be bringing, and I'm going to try as well to bring some fall vibe comic books to talk about. Since it's getting cold in New Jersey, I've got to imagine it's getting colder in the rest of the United States. And if you don't live in the United States, well, it's autumn here, and we're going for autumnal vibes. So as always, you can check us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, Discord, Goodreads. There's links all in the show notes. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast. Infinity Shred does all of our music. They're the best band in the universe. Zander is here, and it's already too late for all of us. So I want to say thank you to Tia and Kara and everybody on Discord who is hanging out with us today. Thank you to Danny for proof listening. Thank you to everyone out there for listening to the show in general. You are wonderful human beings. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.